Yeah. So go on. The size of the data was very small. Yeah. So not necessarily for each profession, the size of the data was small, but only for a few professions. So from the data that I have, this is actually correct. So 70 out of 145 professions that he looked at had smaller sample sizes. That is, their N was less than 20 in number. Yeah. So what do you guys think could be the reason? Extreme values. So Savri, can you explain that a bit more?
Ma'am, like in case of the students, there might be the cases that some student might have died at the 15 and some might be at 30. So if you take that average, then like that.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say that's the correct answer, but I would say you are nearer to the answer. So yeah, you are nearer to the answer. Try to think more. What do these professions mean? Like, when does a professor become a professor? When does a clocksmith become a clocksmith? And when does a student remain a student? Anyone? Oh, so Vaibhav says that maybe it's not students died early, but people who died early were students. So yeah, this is actually, I can maybe say that this is the correct answer. So when we are talking about the profession's so-called student, what we are essentially saying is, so this study is actually a flawed study. So H.C. Lombard conducted this study, and I particularly chose this study to show it to you guys, just to say that you need not trust each and every data set and each and every result that you look at. Try to see if it makes sense to you or not, and use first principles to ask questions like why, how, and others, so as to not be blinded by the fact that this guy is some famous statistician or mathematician or physician, so he must be correct when he did this study. So this study was actually inherently flawed in its terms. And what happened was he chose students to be a profession of itself, which actually shouldn't be the case, right? Because even a chocolate maker was once a student, even a professor was once a student, and even clocksmiths and locksmiths might have been a student once, right? So what happened was, whenever a student died, whenever someone died at the age of around, let's say 18 or 22, we know that they are more likely to be a student, right? So maybe in his death certificates, the profession, because they asked for a profession and they had to mention something, and that guy was actually just studying, so it was written student. So he decided that so-called students should be another profession which should have the average longevity of 20.2, right? Which is clearly not correct. So what I intend to show by this case study is a very simple fact that there are certain biases that might kick in when you analyze the data. So maybe you become an actuary, maybe you become a data scientist, maybe you are an economist or a financial advisor or anyone who works with data in general to make decisions, which is what we call these days big data, right? That is data-driven decisions. So company these days analyze the data that they have, and try to come up with answers that could make them help the customers that they want to serve, which will in a way help them to make the most profit, right? And so these kind of analysis, if you do, then it's of no use. So the very purpose of this subject is maybe not to teach you how to infer the data, but to teach you how to conduct analysis of the data and how to derive results from the numbers that you have, how to derive conclusions from the random numbers that you have, so seemingly random numbers that you might have in the start. And this is what you must always keep in mind when you pose a question. What kind of data am I looking at? Does this make sense? So, see, logic sometimes may be flawed, and which will render the results to be useless, like the case study of H.C. Lombard. So this study is a perfect example of what you should never ever do. And always try to remember this case study whenever you are handed with the data. Never try to impose whatever preconceived notions or beliefs that you have in mind upon the data. Because the data itself will tell you the story that there is. And you sometimes may not, be happy with the result that you have, but that is all you have. And you have to be content with it if not happy. So that is your purpose, to analyze the data, and you should be truthful to the analysis that you do. And in this subject, we will study various different methods of analysis, and each one of those will be not true always and in every situation. So for every different situation, you will have to decide what kind of a test you have to conduct, what kind of a distribution you should fit, right? Because if it were that easy, machines would have easily replaced actuaries, and people and companies wouldn't want your advice, right? So there has to be some certain logic driven decision before you put even the data into the computer, because you have to decide what kind of data is crap, what kind of data is useful. And not always you will get the data in the form that you want to use, and you might have to convert the data. So sometimes in questionnaires, you collect answers in terms of yes or no. And if you want to analyze that data, you will convert it to binary numbers, 0 and 1, which you might then add on as dummy variables, and then, conduct the regression to check out the effect on your independent variable. And that is all you have to do. So just be aware. And that calls for a different study now. So let us look at a new study. So this was again, the Wainer guy is common in between these two studies. But again, this is the study of death of people in Princeton Cemetery. So I want you all to read this page carefully. Take 2 minutes, take 5 minutes, and tell me, what do you guys think this graph shows? Anyone? So what do you guys think this study tells you? So anyone? Anyone who would like to guess what does this graph say? Actually not guess, but you can clearly tell. It has some description as well. Come on. Anyone? I guess by now you should at least know what's going on in the graph.
Yeah, it's as same as the Lombard's experiment. They've plotted the age of death against the birth year.
Right. So what they have done is they have plotted the age of death, as rightly said, against the birth year. So not any birth year, right? The birth years are only from 1700 till around 1980, right?
Correct.
And is there something fishy going on in the data set? Like you can see there was World War One, so the age of death decreased for a while, and then it also again increased for a while. Like what happened? And what do you guys think? Is there something weird in this data set? I want you all to look at it carefully. Anyone? So I think you all can clearly see, right, that the age at death at the initial years is in between 80 and 60, right? For most of the times. But then somewhere after here, it has declined steeply. And any guesses of why would that be the case?
The study was undertaken in 98. So the life expectancy increased. So after 1940, people would be aged some 48, 45. So they were living for longer than people in the earlier times, I think.
Okay. So who all here agree with what she just said? Anvaya, what do you think? Mihir? Vaibhav, Vanshita, what do you guys think?
So if the study was undertaken in 1998, like someone just said, I don't know who said it. So like it was technically impossible if we are considering even 1980. It was technically impossible for anyone who died to be greater than 18 years, right?
Exactly. That is the point, Isha. Very well. So, very well captured, actually. So, would you like to say that again for everyone to understand, or did everyone understand what Isha just said? Did everyone understand that? Can I have a yes or no at least?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So basically, just to summarize it again, what happened was that these guys, they conducted study in the year 1998, right? So the study was conducted in the year 1998. So essentially, if you are looking at the birth, that at the age of death from year 1700 till 1980 around, no person could have been greater than these ages at 1980. So there was again some sort of a bias kicking in, because when these guys looked at, the data of the death of people, they actually kind of ignored the fact that if they're looking at the data in the year 1980, no person could have been higher than the age of 18. So because we have birth year on the x-axis, so you have to remember the fact that any guy who was born in 1980 could not have been more than 18 years age in the year 1998. So when they conducted this study in 1998, the only data of deaths they could find of people born in these years would be of these like numbers like 10, 20, 30, right? Because no one who is born in 1940 could be dying at the age of 70. I mean, even if they died at the age of 70, they would never know it by 1998, right? So there was no case to record the fact. And that is why this graph is essentially telling you nothing, because this is a flawed graph. So maybe either you should cut off the times that you are looking at to take at least 100 into account, or maybe you should, try to not include these points at least, because if you say, wow, look at what's happening here, people are just, not living longer anymore, there is maybe some epidemic or pandemic or something which might have kicked in, but no, there was no such thing. It was a normal thing, and this is what the logic would say. I mean, no one could have lived for longer if they were born in these years. So again, what is the one thing that you guys think is common between the two case studies that we just saw? So Vanshika, did you understand what I just said? Or do you want me to repeat it again? Anyone? Did everyone understand of why is that the case? Yeah. Thank you, Vaibhav and Sabri. So if you haven't understood, please feel free to, unmute yourself or type it in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to explain it again. Yeah, thanks, Vanshika. So again, now I am asking you another question of what do you guys think is common between the two case studies that we just studied? So what is it that we are capping? What is it that we, are missing when these guys conducted the study? I mean, what did these guys miss when they conducted the study? What kind of, yeah? So someone was trying to say something, I guess. Perspective makes analysis of data different. Would you like to elaborate on that more, Vaibhav? So what do you exactly mean by different? Can you still categorize the analysis into right or wrong, or is it just different? Vaibhav? Yeah. So Vaibhav says the way you look at data determines what conclusion you come to. And that's actually a very good answer, I would say. What about others? What do you guys think? Come on, I want each one of you to at least, try. Yeah, that is very important. And thank you very much, Weber, for putting it out there. Data cannot be wrong. The way we read it can be wrong. Again, I want to hear the perspective of each one of you about these two data sets that we just saw. Not exactly data sets, but studies. Come on, so maybe I can guide you guys a bit. What is it that we cap? I think Urjita was trying to say, she was explaining about the Princeton study, something about its connection with the previous study. I guess I have something in the chat box. So Vanshita says that the factors that we use might not cater to what we intended to research. Okay, yeah, I guess I get the gist of it, that maybe sometimes we are led astray by the data and the plots of the data, which we generally think that, whenever you have data, plot it. That is what is the advice given to us all, right? Because a plot might say 1,000 words, and sometimes a plot can also be deceptive. So you never know what factor can affect your decisions. And again, so see, what happened was there was a boundary in the data that you were collecting, in the data that these guys were collecting, in fact. So in this study, what is happening is you have a cap. Why? Because you cannot actually observe the data which is beyond 1998, right? And the same thing happened with Lombard when he was trying to study the average longevity for students, because he could have never known otherwise of what age could a student live up to. And again, you all could only observe these data points when these people died and they registered either in the cemetery or either in the death certificates, right? So there was no way to know how many number of people who are alive are there for each person who is dying, right? For each profession and for each person born in these particular years. So sometimes the data that you collect may be random, may not be random. So there is selection bias every time when you have some data set, and the decision that you have to make is, how do we draw valid inferences from the data that we have? And again, you can never be certain about what kind of inference, about any inference that you have drawn, but you can still be confident enough in your answer, and that could be influential to make a decision rather than making no decision and sitting and let the God play dice, as we say. So again, It's not easy and it doesn't come without the risk. So if you have to, try to analyze a data set, the very first thing that comes to mind is, let us try to model it. Let us try to see how it looks. And what is it that we have in our toolbox that we can use to maybe, come up to the answers that we are posing questions for. So let's say the chapter that we are studying right now is called loss distributions. And I think many of you have already studied the subject CM1. So you might know what kind of data set an insurance company will generally have. So can each one of you volunteer and tell us more about, just give us examples of what kind of data sets an insurance company generally has?
Number of lives alive at each age.
Yeah, that is exactly correct, Mihir. What about others? So we have, I guess, around 9 people, and I want 9 examples. Or you're free to give more examples if you want. They're always welcome.
They also have the data that at what age people tend to buy insurance.
Yeah, at what age people tend to buy insurance. That is correct. Come on, I want to hear answers. Like, I don't think it should even take a second to think what kind of data do these companies have, because there is a wide pool of data sets that these companies have. And again, I want to hear it from everyone.
Expected lifetime of the insured person.
Expected lifetime of the insured person. So yeah, that is actually not the data that they have, but that is something that they calculate
Exactly.
from the data that they previously have, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
So that was still a very good point, Anvia. Thank you very much. And anyone else would like to speak
Whenever
up?
a person is taking insurance from them, like before issuing the insurance, they do a whole background check kind of a thing for that person. So they actually have a lot of data regarding each of their insurance policy holders.
Yeah,
Like their
so
daily habits, if they are smoking or not, what are their health habits like, all of
yeah.
that.
And also the very basic data, right? Whether, what kind of gender do they possess? So because certain risks are much more likelier to be in particular genders, and it can govern the decisions as well, right? So, and Vaibhav says the rate of premium. Yeah, and again, I would say, the rate of premium is something that the companies decide for themselves and not which is given to them. So, yeah, but that is still something that they have. Job profiles, yes. Number of people who discontinue their policies, that is very interesting and a very relevant data that each and every insurance company looks for. Because see, what makes a company going is their customers. And if they see their customers go away, they do not want that, and they have to analyze what is it that is making them go away, or maybe discontinuing their policies or surrender the policies that they have already taken at some point, believing it was for their benefit. So yeah, number of people who discontinue their policies, and the kind of people actually who tend to discontinue their policies would be so much interesting, right? Because then you might charge them a higher premium or something like that, or maybe you can come up with other things which could deter them to discontinue their policies afterwards. What about others? So I have had answers from Isha. What do you think? Any example you might have of the data that these companies have?
Ma'am, I already answered.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh yes, I think you did, yeah. Okay, so I guess we should move forward, and this was just a good exercise, I guess, to let you guys think about the environment that we're going to work in. So these are generally the kind of data sets that we have, and not limited to this. Much more wider data that we have at our hands, and sometimes it's actually very difficult, and that is why we have databases to maintain the data in a structured format so that it could be used again and again to produce the results and to help company make profits or maybe minimize their losses. So yeah, and again, so next thing that we have to care about is, what do we care about? So why do these companies collect the data that they do? What is it that these companies want that makes them undergo the cost of collecting this data? Because data does not come cheap, right? You have to hire people who would, at least encourage other people to fill out the forms, which will give you the data that you have in the company. So the very basic nature of companies is that they want to make profits, and they want to make more and more profits. And so to increase their profits, they want to know what is working and what is not. What is something that they need to work upon, and what is driving their profits? What is it that makes them earn the most? And what is making them, lose something? So again, there are certain things that a company needs to know, especially if they are working in the insurance sector. So again, as Vaibhav rightly pointed out, they need to determine the premium that they put, because there is not only one company, but 1,000 other companies who are setting up maybe different premiums. So you have competition. Another factor is that you don't want to incur losses in the longer term by setting a lower premium and, just having not enough cash, or maybe set up a high premium and you don't get enough customers. So you are in loss either ways. And you have to decide a benchmark, a nice confidence interval for the premium that you should have on your policies for you to maximize your profits, and to, basically analyze the kind of losses that you might incur. So as the name of the chapter says, it is loss distribution. And the thing that we are going to study throughout this, at least the CT6 part of CS2, is about losses and not profits. Because as an actuary, your job is to care about the uncertain and care about the risky businesses and everything else. So if you earn more profits, it is good. But if you have, or if you incur a higher amount of loss, that is definitely not good. And that is what these companies want to insure against. And that is what they hire actuaries for, to analyze these kind of things, maybe at least for modeling purposes, not for the underwriting and all those other things, where you decide the prices and you basically analyze the data. So again, I think now if we try to analyze the losses, there are two things that you should always look at, or there are at least three things that a company always cares about. So one is the number of claims that they incur. How many claims or how many people are claiming upon their policy within a given time period. Then the second thing could be the amount of claims that these people who are incurring the claims have. And third could be, just basic. How much earning do they derive from different kind of claims that these companies incur? So generally, I think even in the introduction class, I drew a graph, which was, so maybe someone here might help me draw this. So I'll have amount of claims on the x-axis and the number of claims on the y-axis. Does anyone remember what kind of a graph this is? Anyone? So
Positively skewed.
Positively skewed. And what does a positively skewed graph looks like?
So So the tail will get thinner as you move on towards the higher side of the amount of claims.
Right. So I think it should probably look something like this,
Yes, correct.
right? So, okay. So you can clearly see that for the higher amount of claims, much more claims are less likely, right? And if you are looking at the average amount of claims, they are much more likely to occur. And if you're looking at, the initial stages of the amount of claims, they're not that likely to occur. So again, I would like to put forth this question. Why do you guys think that this could be the graph that these laws from claims follow? Why not symmetric, or why not negatively skewed? So why do we not have something like this or something like this? And why do we have something like this? Anyone? Reinsurance. So Vaibhav says reinsurance. And can you unmute yourself, Vaibhav? I guess not, because is that why you're chatting in the group? Because I would want you to explain, why do you say reinsurance? Maybe if you can type it. Or if anyone else gets an idea for reinsurance to be one of the reasons. The disturbance here. So where do you think the disturbance is? Is it here? So maybe let us say that this part is A. So again, what do you mean by the disturbance? Okay, so it's actually fine if if there is a bit of noise. I mean, it's okay if there's a TV going on, because I do understand that you're in your house right now. So at least if we can hear you clearly, I'm perfectly fine with the audio. Lol. Okay, so does anyone else see what role insurance might have to play in the kind of graph that we get for the claim amounts or the claim loss, the losses that we have from the claims? Anyone? So Savri says that by the time the claim amount increases, deaths and surrenders also increase. So the number of claims decrease. That is actually a very good reason, and the most intuitive reason actually. Very good answer, Sabri. Come on, I want to hear answers from everyone.
I'm sorry, I don't understand this reason actually. Can you explain it to me?
So
Sabri.
Sabri's reason you mean?
Yeah.
So Sabri, can you explain your reason to Rijita?
Yes, ma'am. When as the what we say, the years of insurance increases, the claim amount also increases. But at the same time, there are many people who die and also surrender. Some people also surrender. So the number of claims that are in existence by the end of that time reduces. I hope you get it.
Right. I just don't understand this logic that as the time increases, the claim amount.
Yeah. So actually what we have on the x-axis here is the amount of claims, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what Savri was trying to say, that was actually a different point actually. That is, if you have time on the x-axis, then as in when, so let's say if you are looking at people who have bought a particular policy, and if you're looking at time for that one particular policy, then the claims that you might incur would be something like the distribution that we have here. Is that what you meant, Sabri? I guess, yeah, because that is how I interpreted it. So, because if we have amount of claims on the x-axis, and the reason that we are looking for is why, as we increase the amount of claims, do the number of claims decrease here and increase here?
So time actually has no role to play here, right? You just
Yeah.
the amount and number here.
Yes. So, I mean, the time could be same for the amount of claim here, and it could be different from here and there. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think when Vaibhav said about reinsurance, what happens is some companies, not each company, but most of the insurance companies, they have this reinsurance in place. And when I'm saying reinsurance, for those who are hearing this word for the first time, let me explain you what reinsurance is. So what happens is if you are an insurance company, let us start with the basics. So if I am a person and I am driving in a big city and I want to insure myself against any accident that I might, get into and incur a higher loss. So I'll go to an insurance company and buy insurance, right? Because if at all that huge loss anytime occurs, or if any situation like accident or something happens, then I don't want to be, put into a financial risk position that would threaten my income or stability of my finances. So what I will do is I will insure myself again with an insurance company. And if you are an insurance company, what you do is you insure yourself against the claims that people can bring upon you. So that is called reinsurance, because when an insurance company carries out insurance for the claims that they might incur with another reinsurance firm, the treaty that is going on is actually a reinsurance treaty. So there are various different types of reinsurance that you can have, which we will study later in the chapters. But that can be actually one of the reasons of why the number of claims could be this low. But again, there is something that I did miss in this argument while I was explaining. So if anyone could, point that out, I would be very much happy. So what I said was that, what happens is companies claim insurance. So insurance companies claim reinsurance for the losses of higher amounts. And that is in a way, not directly, but indirectly could be a reason for observing lesser number of claims as and when the amount of claims increase. Can anyone see what I'm missing here in the explanation that I just gave?
So, ma'am, are you saying that the insurance companies, will themselves take upon less number of cases which will have such huge amounts, and that is why the number of claims that have such high amounts are less.
Exactly, Isha. So that is exactly what doesn't happen. And that is why what I just said is not 100% correct. Because we know that even if there is a reinsurance in place, the person will file a claim with the insurance company first, right? And then that insurance company will have some business with the reinsurance company in separate books, right? So this claim has in a way already being filed. So when you're looking at the data for the number of claims and the amount of claims, you are not likely to see a downward slope here. But let us say if the insurance company is only recording the net claim amount that they have to pay, at the end. So what happens is, let's say if someone comes and let's say if here, let's say the amount is 10,000, it may have any units, crores or lakhs. We don't necessarily care. And let's say here we have, okay, let's put 5,000 here and we have 2,500 somewhere around there, right? So what we are saying is, what I am saying is, let us say this company has a reinsurance in place. So for any claim which is higher than 10,000, X% of that claim amount is paid by the reinsurance company. So what will happen is, let's say if this X% is 60%. Okay. So if there is a claim amount of 10,000, what will happen is 60% of that claim, which is 6,000, will be paid by the reinsurance company. So the amount that the insurance company will have to pay will be somewhere 4,000. So you see that there might be more numbers which will be thrown from here to here, which might increase the number of claims that you have for this particular amount. But again, there is a flaw in this as well. Because if I say that is happening, then I should never have any amount which is beyond 10,000, right? Because for any amount which is higher than 10,000, 60% of it is paid by the reinsurance company. So maybe the kind of data set maybe the kind of graph that I will have would look somewhat like this, right? So does this make sense? I guess I have something in the chat box. Someone here says yes. What about others? Take some time to think and reflect. So I have recorded this class and the recording will always be available to you guys, and the PDF of what I'm writing on the board will also be available. But what I want you all to focus in the classroom is on understanding the concepts and participate in the class and the discussion that is going on, because that is what will lead, to a clearer understanding of the concepts that you're going to study. Right? So this is just one of the reasons, not all of the reasons, and the only reason that the companies have for their claim amount data to follow and have a positively skewed distribution. So again, while we are talking about distributions, what do you guys think? Why do you guys think we need distributions in the first place? I think you all have studied CS1, right? And you studied ample distributions, different distributions, families of distributions. But for what reason? Why do you guys think we need distributions in the first place? Anyone?
Because there are different types of data, and so we need to classify them accordingly.
Okay, so Mihir says we have different types of data, and so basically by classification, you mean we want to simplify the analysis that we want to do, right?
Yes.
Because we are in a way assuming that all the classifications that we have certain properties which make them distinct from one another, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good reason. What about others?
To make the study easy.
That is actually the main reason. Yes, you want to make the study easy. That's correct as well. What about others?
So that we can make some general assumptions about the particular data set without much of an error.
Yeah, so general word is of utmost importance in the statement that you just gave us. And to generalize something, because we know a lot more about that general thing than the particular unique data set that we are given. And there might be some anomalies, errors that, we might want to not take into account, but also we have to keep in mind that these errors are in a way, what makes this particular data set unique. So you don't want to minimize the errors in general way, but in statistical manner, when you're modeling, you want to minimize the error within your model, right? Again, do we have answers from, okay, I guess I'm missing out on the chat. So by studying the distribution, we can predict the relationship that is extra and predict future data. Perfect, perfect. So Weber and Vanshita. And yeah, again, so these are actually good reasons that we need distributions for. Because in a way, the reason that we're collecting data is because we need answers. We need definite answers to the questions that will help us. So maybe we want to predict the number of claims that might occur so as to keep enough cash with us as reserves to be able to cater to those claim amounts, right? As and when they occur, and not fall short of the cash. So that is one decision that a company might have to make. And how do you make predictions of the claims that are to occur in the upcoming period? So what you do is you take the data set that you have already from the previous claims and you look and see if there is some trend. If there is something common, do we have more number of claims around November, December, or around January? I mean, there might be other factors governing these decisions, but is there any relationship between the data set that we have and the thing that we're trying to predict? And that is what distributions help us with. And that is actually how distributions came into being. So no one, no one just sits and decides, okay, today I want to name a distribution and I have done this study and yeah, I want to call this Kashmira distribution. You cannot do that, right? So what you do is there are some general observed studies. There are some general trends which are observed in various studies. And when you see those occurrences more often in nature, you combine them and you classify them as something which has its distinct properties and certain subtleties that make it the distribution that it is. So for the normal curve, has anyone heard the story of how did normal curve, came about to be the normal curve that it is, basically? Does anyone know who was the one who derived the normal distribution or came up with the idea of normal distribution in the first place?
Some person with the surname Gauss, because it's also called as Gaussian distribution, right?
That's a good guess. That's a good guess. So there is actually a controversy because Gauss developed the idea. So Gauss was the one who came up with the formula itself, but the idea wasn't his own. And that is often the case with mathematicians because, again, as we say, the ideas are never yours. But again, the formula was derived by Gauss. So that is why the distribution is also known as Gaussian distribution. It is also known as the bell curve because it takes the shape of a bell. And yeah, but actually the guy who came up with the idea of normal distribution was de Moivre, and he was acting as consultants to some gamblers to make some money. And what he used to do is he used to, try to make bets and see if he wins or not. So to ease his work, he did certain experiments with coin tosses, and that is when he came up with the normal distribution, and he observed that pattern. And again, as in when his study was published, the other people also tried to see, and they saw that, height of the people, weight of the people, it also follows normal distribution. And I think there is a very nice talk about some guy. I think I will, okay, so I don't think you guys have access to Google Classroom as of now, but once we have access to Google Classroom, or I might just put it in the WhatsApp group as well, there is a nice talk where a guy shows you, a certain, I think it's a hand exhibit, which you just, you have to shake it and it forms a normal distribution, random. So you drop balls, and I think it is shaped something like this. I don't exactly remember how. And it has certain spaces. And then when you drop balls on random, so you know that if there is a ball dropped from here, let's say, so you have a ball here, then it might go, while this ball is transcending down, it might go somewhere here or there, right? It won't suddenly go there or there. So you know that there are much more chances of getting a distribution at the end for all the balls collected, something which is like this. So yeah, the normal distribution is actually observed a lot in the nature, but you guys will be surprised to see how much other distributions which are positively skewed are also observed in nature, but just unknown to us as yet. And there is still so much of research that is going on around these things, but yeah, and this is a time to explore it, because there is 2 new chapters called copula and extreme value theory are all about, how the new normal is not normal. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And this is the first chapter, and we clearly see that, normal distribution is exactly not something that we look for when we are trying to analyze the claims of, claims and the losses that a company might incur. So again, what we want to do is we want to model the data set that we have to do some prediction and the analysis. And that is why we fit distributions to the data set that you have. So this graph that I have drawn here is a very smooth, not even jagged graph. It is very smooth and a continuous graph. But when you plot your data set, you will not see something like this. It will just be something like these dots. You will only have these dots, right? And what you do is you try and make a model out of it, and then you fit the best line. So if it is a linear regression, you will always get something which is a straight line. And as you might have guessed, here we are not particularly performing regression, but we'll try to do some time series modeling as well in upcoming chapters, and you will see how to fit these distributions to the data that we have. But for the sake of first chapter, we will in a way assume that, there exists a distribution which is always positively skewed and has a tail in the right, a very long tail in the right, to govern the losses from claims that we are trying to, look for. And so I'm sure, I think for the next lecture, I just want you all to, go through your CT3 CS1 book and try to, revise the concepts of distributions, how to calculate the mean, how to calculate the variance, because I don't think I would like to, do that again in the classroom, but I will explain how to figure out the NGF, and that is a shortcut way to figure out the mean and the variance. And again, in this exam, you don't have to figure out the mean and the variance of a particular distribution. We will have to figure out mean and variances using the mean and variances of the distributions, which you can directly use from the formula booklet. So in the next lecture, we will study the basic distributions that these losses fit to, like exponential, gamma, variable, and various other distributions, and we'll explore them in depth and try to, fit some loss distributions to the data sets that we have. So I think, so again, just to, make it clear again, we will usually conduct classes on Saturdays and Sundays, but because this weekend I wasn't home and it was only yesterday that I did come home. So I had to conduct a class today on a Monday, which is a weekday. And only occasionally, I think, if we want to explore something which is beyond what's there in the textbook. And I think I do have some plans, of doing that this time because the exam is in April and I think we have enough time. So that would be at the discretion of you all, to attend the sessions or not. But I would highly encourage for you all to attend those sessions because I think it is more fun, if you study the concepts and if you consider it fun and enjoyable as well. And we can easily relate the concepts that we are studying not only to the actuarial domain, but to wider applications that might just, spark your interest and who knows what happens next. So I guess the session for today is officially completed. If you guys have any questions or any particular questions to ask related to the subject or my teaching or anything, you can ask.
So ma'am, when I had asked the sir, so he said that you will be teaching one part, the CT6 part, and Anmol sir, he said, would be teaching the CT4 part. So are we going to have any lecture of him as well?
Oh, okay. So actually, that has been altered now. I think he's a bit busy, so he has actually told me to take the another subject as well, and I will be taking the CT4 part as well.
So you will be teaching the whole course?
Yeah, so I'll be taking the whole course.
Okay, and
so
could you also give us an idea about how many chapters are there for the CS2 course?
How many chapters are there? So I think I actually did make a PPT, but I don't have it here. So, okay, for CS2, we do have around 21 chapters in total. I'll be sharing the material in the group soon. The book, as in when we, have a group of confirmed people who will be joining the classes. So I'll do share the material and we will have booklets distributed for each chapter specifically with questions related to those chapters so that you can revise once we finish that chapter in the class. And I'm planning to conduct quiz after each and every topic that we cover so that you keep revising the topics at spaced intervals and you don't zone out when I ask you something about something that we studied maybe a month ago. So yeah, and Vaibhav is asking corrected the classes earlier in the day. So yes, I think I will conduct classes on Saturday and Sundays. That will mostly be around 8 to 10 a.m. Is that okay with everyone?
Ma'am, are there no weekday batches? I mean,
weekday batches. So I'm not sure we have two sets of batches as yet. I mean, there is only one batch that is going on, but I will be sharing my videos. So what you can do is you can actually watch the videos, and if you have any doubts, I can cater to your doubts anytime personally.
Ma'am, actually, I think that if we make it like a weekday batch, then even if it's at night, then it will be fine.
Yeah, so I'm actually equally happy with anything, but I think the Saturday morning and Sunday morning, everyone is fresh. Someone has till 12, they have classes. So maybe, yeah, I can keep it in the evening on Saturday and in the morning on Sundays. Does that work well? And why do you ask, to for it to be in the weekends? Like, are you busy on the weekdays? So I think, again, the SMOM coordinator will put a survey, I guess, for all the available times that we have. And then we'll go with, the time which is most suitable to everyone. And we'll try to adjust a bit here and there for everyone to be happy and content. Any other concerns that anyone has?
ma'am, like, how are you gonna proceed with the syllabus? I mean, till when can we expect the portion to be done?
Okay, so what I will be doing is we need around at least I say 50 classes, and in December or January I'm planning to take classes for a higher maybe like more classes in a week, so that we finish the portion by mid-February, because I do want you all to have some time for the revision before the exam. At least a month of revision is very important, because I don't think CS2 is a very easy subject. Like, it is definitely not even easy as well. I would say it requires a bit of a practice and some time for you to develop the intuition, because you definitely have to sit and think about the topics that we're discussing over the weekend throughout the week. And we'll be catering to your doubts in the WhatsApp group always. You can call me or message me privately as well. And we will have a Google Classroom setup so that there is even a more convenient and a formal way to contact, but we will still continue with the WhatsApp group as well. So yeah, and we will also have mock tests. So I believe we will have, three kind of things overall: learning, which will go on till Feb mid. Then we'll go with the revision, where I do encourage for you all to, solve booklets as and when we finish off with the chapters. And we will also solve a couple of questions in the classroom, just for, to check if you all have understood the concept well or not. And the last will be about rehearsal, where you will try a mock exam within the exam situation in 3 hours. And yeah.
And ma'am, how about R? Will it be done along with the chapters, or will it be done after the theoretical part is over?
No, so actually it won't be done after the theoretical part is over. So last time there was a bit of, miscommunication, but this time we are going to make it sure that we have, as and when I finish a particular topic in theory, you do experience that in R, because I do believe that, learning should happen simultaneously, theoretical learning as well as practical learning. So the R learning will actually be one chapter behind of the theoretical learning, so that you get a nicer idea and a nicer flow of learning R as well. Because I think it requires not actually the kind of R that you guys study is not much of a coding, because the libraries are there and you just need to use those libraries. So it is not that difficult, I would say. But it is also important to understand and grasp the gist of the concepts first, so that you can actually understand the graphs that the R is reproducing. Because you won't be, putting in the formulas which will produce the graph. You will just have to type the library and maybe, just fit.arima, and it will give you the fit of the model. But you should know what's going on behind the screen. And that is why once the whole chapter is finished and the topic is finished, basically, we will have the R sessions accordingly. Any other questions? Or any general thing that you might want to say, talk?
So ma'am, I don't know if you would exactly know about this, but like mostly we are expecting normalcy from this COVID situation by December or January, right? So will there be any changes if, like right now, no one has any option about the offline thing, but what if we are more comfortable that time with the offline thing? So is there any transition kind of a thing planned?
So actually, personally, I have seen the graphs and the waves of COVID cases from various countries, and India is just in the first phase, I would say. People do say that, it's the second wave, but it is actually not the second wave. And I'll just tell you what I believe, that till December, it is not actually going to be normal. But even if it is normal, I don't think, because I don't believe that it is going to be normal, that I would be comfortable to come to Mumbai, because that is not where my home is. So I would have to look for a stay and all those sort of things. And I would only want to do that once everything is, normal. And with no risk, actually, with minimum risk, I would say. That does sound
Actually, ma'am, I was
pessimistic.
asking because some of us are from Pune as well.
Ah, okay. So do you want to travel to Mumbai, or are you more comfortable with online lectures? Because I think, so see, even if it goes offline, I think I'll make it a point that the lectures are being recorded and you guys will be sent the lectures, or maybe there will be live streaming or something. So we'll have that technology in place. If there is, offline lecture and some students do not want to travel to our centers, but most likely there will not be offline centers, offline lectures. And at least for this term, we will go on and continue with the online studies.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, what will be the duration of the class on weekends? I guess
2
I missed
hours
out.
maximum.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 hours. And I think so. We actually don't have a fixed amount that we do ghanta ho gaya, so that's it. But more or less around 2 hours. Anything else that anyone want to ask? So again, the recordings will be available for you guys. I'll upload them on the drive and we'll share the link as and when we have another group, I guess, of the people who are definitely joining in for the classes. So yeah. Is there anyone who has already, decided to continue with the classes? And if you want, the recording or something, I can share it. There's no issue with that. Yeah, so Weber, actually don't worry, we can keep it in the evening as well. We'll roll out a certain form where you'll have to fill out your preferences and we'll decide. So does anyone else have anything to ask? Anything that you want to know? I guess that's it then. So it was lovely to have you all and interact with you all. And I look forward to, again, continue interacting with you all. You can also leave the meeting if you want to and stay if you have any questions or just message me anytime.